Calling all Superman cosplayers. Hi everyone, my name's TJ, and I'm a fan of the All-Star Superfan podcast, and since I don't have a Signal watch, I'm just going to use social media. Let's all use the upcoming Superman movie opening, July 11th, 12th, and 13th, to raise funds for the Christopher and Dana Reeve Foundation. You can contact your local movie theater and let them know you'd like to volunteer to be in their lobby as the Man of Steel on opening weekend. You can volunteer as much as you're able. Every hour you give can make a real difference to someone in need. The Christopher and Dana Reeve Foundation is 100% on board and is going to be supplying us with an official digital link that people can use to donate directly to the foundation, so you don't need to worry about handling any money. You can invite your friends and fellow cosplayers to join you as Lois Lane, Jimmy Olsen, Lex Luthor, and other DC characters. And you are not alone. Alan posted a link to the Facebook event, Superman 25, in the All-Star Superfan Podcast Facebook group. The event is there so we can all work together and help each other to achieve this once-in-a-lifetime feat. We might not be able to bend steel in our bare hands or change the course of mighty rivers, but together we can have Superman's greatest ability, to give others hope and a better tomorrow. Thanks, everyone.
We talk Superman, and we know what's happening. We talk Superman, and we cover everything.
Welcome back to All-Star Superfan Podcast, the show that takes flight through the 86-year legacy of the Man of Steel, across comics, screen, and everything in between. I'm Alan Burke, and as always, I'm joined by my co-host Rob O'Connor as we continue our deep dive into what many consider to be one of the greatest Superman stories ever told, Grant Morrison and Frank Whiteley's All-Star Superman. In this second installment, we're covering issues 7 through 12, where the themes get bigger, the emotions run deeper, and the legacy of Superman reaches mythic heights. Joining us once again is our good friend and fellow Superman scholar Anthony Desiato, host of Digging for Kryptonite, and one of the most insightful voices in the Superman fandom. We'll be unpacking the mind-bending plots, the heartbreaking humanity, and yes, even that animated adaptation. And of course, we'll be reflecting on the enduring legacy of this modern classic, why All-Star Superman continues to inspire, challenge, and define the character for new generations. So whether you're a long-time fan or stepping into the story for the first time, get ready, because the sun is dying, time is running out, and Superman still has one last feat to perform. Welcome, everybody.
Sun is dying, weather is so blue.
Anthony, it's great to have you back, man.
Thank you for having me back. I really enjoyed our last conversation, and like I said last time, it's just a really great opportunity to revisit this classic. So I really had a blast going through these issues again, so thank you.
Even the bizarro ones?
You know what? Especially the bizarro ones.
So Rob, Superman news-wise, we've had some announcements over the last while. We've had some new figure releases that we might want to talk about, and a timely announcement in regards to an audiobook for All-Star Superman. You'd swear we had planned that and timed it perfectly with some insider information, but unfortunately that wasn't the case. It was just a pure fluke.
Well, actually, it was a fluke, but we were going to drop the first episode a little bit later, and then the audiobook announcement came out and we were like, okay, let's drop it now. So yeah, well, it was very timely. I'm really excited about that because there's not enough audio dramas, I feel, with especially with characters other than Batman. There's a bunch of really good Batman ones, but I've been saying for years they need to do more Superman ones. Superman has a proud legacy of audio dramas, not only the legendary radio show, but also the wonderful BBC adaptations of John Byrne's Man of Steel run, and then The Death and Return of Superman. Those are absolutely fabulous. Friend of the show, Stuart Mulrain, is an absolute expert on those, and I think he's actually interviewed Dirk Maggs about them a couple of times, so it'll be great to hear a Superman audio thing again. I'm really looking forward to that, and I believe it's not so much, it's going to actually be like an extension of the story, so they're probably going to add material into it, which is exciting, because I'd love to kind of the press release even mentioned that they're going to go deeper into kind of what the characters are thinking in specific scenes and stuff like that, which I think is really exciting. So I'm really looking forward to seeing that, or hearing that rather.
Where do you stand on, Anthony? Are you looking forward to the audiobook?
Yeah, I'm excited. I have to say, I've still only dipped my toes in the waters of the classic radio serial, but I did, of course, listen to the Clan of the Fiery Cross, the seminal arc, and really found it fascinating. And then, yeah, Rob, to your point, that Death and Return of Superman BBC audio drama, I only finally listened to that for the first time at the beginning of this year, and I really enjoyed it. And it's just a very interesting, different way to experience a story. And so generally, I'm a proponent of, hey, like, let's tell these stories in different forms. And I am intrigued by the idea of fleshing out a little bit more, which will be the opposite approach of the animated adaptation that we've already gotten, where there was more about stripping it away to fit the runtime. So the notion that, oh, no, we're going to be able to really delve into this even more. Yeah, I'm very intrigued. And obviously it's timely given the influence of All-Star Superman on James Gunn's Superman. So yeah, all around makes sense. I'm excited.
I know I was complaining about Batman audio adaptations and how there's so many of them, but I just to say a nice thing about those BBC things again. They did a version of Nightfall at the time, and Michael Gough from the Batman movies plays Alfred in it, and they're so much fun. It's like, if you can imagine if they had done Nightfall on the Adam West show, that's kind of what they're like in the best possible way. They're really, really good, and the guy playing Batman in those is amazing. I'm so sorry. It's Bob Sessions is his name. He's He is in Hellraiser of all things. He plays the voice of Frank the Monster in Hellraiser, and he's actually an incredible Batman. He's probably my favorite Batman voice actor next to Kevin Conroy. He's that good. So definitely check those out.
Do we have a release date for that? Do you know off the top of your head? Is it coming out this year?
It's the end of June. If I'm not mistaken, it's the end of June.
That is very soon.
I have to say the big news this week that I was very excited about was the reveal of the images in relation to the Spin Master Superman the movie Christopher Reeve era Kenner style action figures, and I just think they're beautiful. Now they're advertised. I found this very strange. They're advertised as 6-inch. They're definitely not 6 inches. They're definitely 3 3/4, I would imagine. But yeah, we've got Superman. We've got 2 Jor-Els, which is controversial enough. I think we might talk about that for a second. We've got Lex Luthor, we've got Lois Lane, most importantly, thank God. And am I missing someone?
Zod, Lex, Lois, 2 Jor-Els, and Superman. Yeah,
Zod is the last one. I'm really impressed by them. I'm really looking forward to them. They have that vintage Kenner Star Wars look. Even the card is very similar in style to that. What do you think about them, Anthony? Are you excited? Are you gonna catch them all?
I'm excited. I mean, I've definitely seen the similar Star Wars type figures of the day. And actually, the comic shop that I worked at for many years, we had a lot of them in our display case. So like, I was always around them. I never had any, but there's definitely something about that retro style that is appealing. I've definitely been far more into the McFarlane Superpowers line that they've been doing. A little hit or miss, but overall they've been fun to get. But no, these are pretty striking. I would happily pick these up as well. I agree. 2 Jor-Els. I'm always a proponent of greater variety of characters as opposed to different variations. I mean, if we could have both, great. Like do white and black robe Jor-El and another character. But if we have to pick, I would have rather another character. A Clark Kent feels like it would have been the most obvious choice.
Yeah. I have to say I have serious issue with those McFarlane Superpowers figures. What is the story with the little cable going through the cape and leaving a hole in the cape? I have the Superman and the Batman, and I just cannot understand what the thought process was in relation to that. It drives me crazy. Every time, even I have one in my display case here, the Superman display case, and every time I see the hole in the cape, it drives me nuts. But Rob, you've been waving the flag for Spin Master for a while, haven't you?
I love Spin Master, and I much prefer them to McFarlane, actually. I think they do nicer figures at a much lower cost, and they feel like toys that you would have played with as a kid. I will admit, I really like these, and I am going to get them. I was hoping for something a little bit more like they did a really, really beautiful Michael Keaton Batman Returns figure recently, and like a Batwing set, and it was $25, guys. It's so affordable. You can get it on Amazon still. It's beautiful. It's hanging in my living room right now, and it's absolutely gorgeous. And the Michael Keaton likeness was like insanely good. It's absolutely perfect. It is way better than anything McFarlane's ever done. And I was kind of looking forward to something like that for Christopher Reeve, I'll admit. But I get the retro Kenner thing. And they did say the CEO of Spin Master did this lovely interview where he was talking about how excited he was to do these, and he was saying that he wanted them to be in the style of figures that might have been released at the time, and these absolutely look like that. And I have owned some some kind of Star Wars figures from the late 70s and the early 80s, and they look like, even the way the waist, the way that the legs are articulated, and the way the coats hang on Jor-El looks like identical to Darth Vader. And I'm just relieved and delighted that Lex Luthor has a removable wig, which they never do with these. He's always just bald or he has hair, and the removable wig is just brilliant. I just really, really hope there's a wave 2, and that we get I'm hoping we get Evil Superman. I really, really, really hope we get Nuclear Man, and I think we will, because in the original leaked image that came out with all the characters that were going to feature in the line, Nuclear Man was there. So I really hope we get him. Really hope we get Ursa and Non. And as you say, Anthony, a Clark Kent figure would be great. Now, traditionally, Clark Kent figures, they're very rare. Like, it's rare that they make them. Like, even the one from the Superpowers line in the 80s was like
the mail away special, yeah.
It was a mail away special because they didn't think kids would want a figure of a guy in a business suit. So it's not outside the realms of possibility that we won't get a Clark Kent in this line. But the fact that we got a Lois Lane is a miracle in itself. So I'm really excited for these. I'm definitely going to buy them all. And yeah, I'm hoping for a wave 2, definitely.
Like Anthony said there, that like I think it's a strange decision to release 2 versions of Jor-El. You're a fan of the black cloak Jor-El, aren't you?
Yeah, man, because you can put him next to Zod, and you can do a recreation of the scene at the start of the movie. And the best thing is, you can make a little diorama, and it wouldn't even be that hard to make, because all you need to do is print out the giant faces and put them in a big black area, and there you go, you're off, you know. And then make the little rings out of paper or something. Done. So I'm looking forward to doing that.
I'm waiting with bated breath for Cyborg Vera. That's the one I want. I want Cyborg Vera. I want Gus Gorman. I want Ross Webster. I want Lorelei. I'm not going to get any of that stuff.
We were talking about this in the group chat, me and you, off mic, and I was saying the day they release a Vera Webster action figure is the day that Superman is more popular than Batman again.
I can see a cyborg Vera, man. I can see that traumatized generations of movie watchers and kids from the 80s. I can see that happening. If
they were going to do like, I feel like if we get a wave 2, they will do Evil Superman. If they were going to do one other thing from Superman 3, they possibly might do Cyborg Vera, because it's the one thing that absolutely everybody, even people who don't like Superman, remember that crazy moment in Superman 3 where she turns into a robot. Everybody brings it up. So I could see them doing that. And it would be a fun, cool, colourful figure to make. Whereas I don't think we're getting Robert Vaughn, man. That's not going to happen. I love that movie and I love him in it, but it's not going to happen.
Were you as traumatized by Superman 3 as a kid, Anthony?
No, I wasn't, but over the course of revisiting the movie and talking about it on the podcast and everything, I certainly encountered that from people, and I can get it. That just wasn't my experience. But speaking of Superman 3, I know it's unlikely, but we got a Lois, so I feel like maybe we get Alana Lang.
That'd be amazing.
Maybe yeah. Alana Lang. I mean, I'm still banging my head against the wall that these Funko Pop Smallville waves have twice now skipped over Alana, given how central she was to the show for so long. So I would love a Lana figure at some point.
So, folks, will we get into issues 7 through 12 of All-Star Superman? I know people have been waiting for us to get this out and want to find out our thoughts on the next 6 issues. So, Anthony, you actually have the unenviable task of walking us through the Bizarro back-to-back issues, number 7 and 8, starting with episode 7, Being Bizarro. Can you talk to us about that?
Yeah, I mean, look, I'll get into the recap, but I actually ended up kind of embracing this homework assignment because, as I've said before on and off mic, these 2 issues historically have been my least favorite of the 12-issue maxi series. And mostly because while I like Bizarro generally, the whole Bizarro speak, the backward speak, has always put me off. But I wanted to go into this with an open mind. And one thing that has clicked for me recently, I talked about this on my show when we covered Emperor Joker not too long ago. I think in the past with the Bizarro speak, I've been thinking about it too much, where I've been, I think, parsing it out too specifically. And it's like, well, what is everything in the sentence backwards? And I'm driving myself crazy. Like, what does it actually mean? And then with that last reading of Emperor Joker, I was like, why don't you just relax? And instead of going too crazy with this, just get the overall sense and then flip it. And so that kind of more relaxed approach to the backward speak allowed me to access it a little bit better. and I guess I just don't get too bogged down by it anymore. And that kind of opened up, I think, a little bit of a pathway towards enjoying these issues a little bit more. So that's kind of how I come into these. All right, so issue 7, being Bizarro. We open on Leo Quintum and his team searching the Underverse for their missing Bizarro technician. Meanwhile, in space, Superman is releasing his baby Sun Eater into the wild. More on that to come. But then he's attacked by a swarm of these generic-looking Bizarros, and we see this giant cubed Bizarro world. And then back on Earth, more of these Bizarros crash land in the streets of Metropolis. The Daily Planet Christmas party is invaded by a Bizarro who touches this poor woman named Allie. The Bizarro takes on Allie's form, and Allie becomes a Bizarro herself. So now we get a sense of how these Bizarros function in terms of what they're able to change and then the change that they undergo themselves. And this poor Bizarro Allie earns a one-way ticket out the window, courtesy of one Steve Lombard. Back on the street, Superman engages the Bizarro Superman. So one of these Bizarro creatures has copied Superman's form and his powers. The Daily Planet crew escapes via blimp, and Jimmy calls Leo Quintum and learns that they're dealing with a planet eater, i.e. the Bizarro world, which is mimicking Earth and dispatching infectious material that copies what it comes into contact with. And Leo also reveals that sunlight weakens them, hence their attack under the cover of night. Superman rendezvous with the Daily Planet crew, and he laments that he's only one man, but then he realizes that he's dealing with a single organism, essentially a giant monster, not this vast invasion force. Jimmy tips him off about the light weakening the creature, and Superman flies hard into Bizarro World, causing a massive explosion, the light from which causes the Bizarros on Earth to drop, and Bizarro World to begin sinking back into the Underverse. Unfortunately, Superman remains trapped there, and he's greeted by the only Bizarro capable of rational thought and speak, Zabarro. To be continued.
Really, I have to say, when I read this first, I struggled with it again. I was like, oh, but I've gone back to it a few times, and like you, Anthony, I've gained a new appreciation for it. And once you get past any difficulties you have with Bizarro as a character, and like you said, the speech and all that kind of stuff, there is a lot to unpack here. I found throughout it. What do you think, Rob?
Yeah, I really like this one actually. And I forgot that like most of this one takes place on Earth. There's actually very little Bizarro world or even Bizarro speak in it. Like it's mainly a battle on Earth and cool stuff happening there. Just a couple of small observations I made reading it this time. The newsroom scene where they're all having a party in the Daily Planet. I really like how Frank Quitely draws all the different people from the newsroom, because they're all like different shapes and sizes, which is really nice and really charming. Like one of the things that bothers me about Jim Lee's artwork is, and a lot of artists, everyone is like super hot and they're either really, really jacked or really, really sexy looking. And they tend to only have like a couple of expressions. Frank Quitely just has such a complex range of different types of people that he draws. Like there's a much larger woman there, but like she's not drawn to like look like a slob or anything. She's just a larger woman. Like Perry White has his receding hairline. Steve Lombard has that big barrel chest. And then you see this absolutely beautiful black man in the background, and he's just like really wrinkly and kind of skinny and wrinkly and like just really, really charming looking characters of different shapes. I just really, really like that. And then that one of the opening pages where Superman is saying goodbye to the Sun Eater just really, really touched me. It's absolutely lovely. I think you were about to say something about that, Anthony, were you?
No, I just agree with you. Yeah, I love that moment, and especially knowing that the baby Sun Eater will make a return, and we know how that will go, and we'll talk about it in a couple of issues. But even just in and of itself, just this notion that we have seen in previous issues of Superman caring for this baby Sun Eater, forging those miniature suns to feed him, and now letting him go like a pet. Yeah, that was definitely very moving. And I have to say, for me overall, and I think this is the aspect of the issue that I really have come to appreciate. I think it's quite clever, is just the nature of Bizarro World as this invasive organism. And then it manifests all of these Bizarro forms. Because when we talk about Bizarro generally, I mean, the sweet spot for me is a twisted clone of Superman. But if we go back to the pre-crisis lore, or the whole business with the duplicator ray, I can get on board with the duplicator ray for Bizarro Superman. But by the time we get to Bizarro World and all of these different copies of people, it's like, we got to draw the line somewhere. So just this notion that I feel like the planet eater aspect, I think is a pretty a pretty seamless way to kind of give rise to all of these different versions, and we'll see more of them in the next issue. But I just thought that was a neat twist on the typical kind of Bizarro World setup.
Now, apropos of nothing, just on the not apropos of nothing, on the topic of Bizarro World, here is a comic where we see a planet coming perilously close to Earth's atmosphere, and Superman has to fly up and push it out of the way. Now, you're wearing the Blur t-shirt right about now, Anthony. This just hit me reading this today. I was like, this feels familiar. And if I'm not mistaken, the Smallville finale came out like a year or two after this comic. I might be right in saying. Did that ever strike you that maybe they'd read this and that's where they got that ridiculous idea from?
So the Smallville finale was spring 2011. I think this came out, 2000? We talked about how delayed these issues were, so I'm not sure exactly when this one fell, but 2007,
I think this was like 2009 or thereabouts. Or maybe it was 2008.
Either way, I love Smallville to death. At the same time, do I think those writers were pouring over DC Comics generally, let alone this one specifically? No, I've never really gotten that sense, with limited exception. I think there were some specific writers who were more dialed into it, but as much as I love Smallville, I would be surprised if this were a direct pull for them. You never know, but I doubt it.
One thing I just want to, what I really like about this version of Bizarro, it's a disease. It's almost like a disease that you can literally catch and it spreads. It's like an infection, like a virus, and I really like that. And see, in the last episode, you made an excellent point, and it really kind of opened my eyes to how to view All-Star Superman in a new way. You made the point that, yes, it's fantastical, and he has a baby Star Eater, and he's forging these suns on this galactic anvil, and he's flying to other planets to get flowers for Lois, but really he's just doing what we all do, but just on a grander scale. He's feeding his pet, he's getting flowers for his girlfriend, for his partner, and that, I have to say, listening back to that episode, that was a fantastic point. But it's very much a cliffhanger episode. We move into issue 8 then, and we need to find out who Zabaro is. So can you walk us through that, Anthony?
Yes, issue 8, Us Do Opposite. So Superman, powers fading one by one, is trapped on Bizarro World as it is sinking back into the Underverse, an event referred to as the All Night, and he finds himself crushed under the weight of this phenomenon. His only ally is Zabaro, who explains that Bizarro World is trying to placate Superman by creating new Bizarros from Superman's memory, and throughout the story we see Bizarro versions of Jor-El and members of the Justice League, including Flash and Green Lantern. Superman hatches a plan to build an escape rocket, but Zabaro points out the futility in trying to get the others to help and laments his own supreme loneliness on Bizarro World surrounded by his backward brethren. Ultimately, Superman is able to get through to the Bizarros by using their same backward speak, and a rocket is built. Zabaro is dismayed that there's only room for one on the rocket, but Superman says it's too big of a risk for Zabaro to come, and Zabaro shares his poetry with Superman. Later, the Bizarros start the all-night ceremony too early, and Superman worries they'll launch the rocket without him. Despite it being harder to move than ever under the weight of the sinking Bizarro World, he makes it to the rocket in time. Zabaro accepts his place on Bizarro World, concluding that he might find himself just as lonely on Earth as he does on Bizarro World. And Superman praises the unique perspective of Zabaro's poetry. Zabaro inadvertently snuffs out the flame meant to light the rocket, but Superman goads Bizarro Superman into flinging the rocket into space, and Superman achieves escape velocity. Meanwhile, while all of this is going on, Leo Quintum clues Lois in to Superman's fatal condition and also notes something hiding in the sun, which points to Lex's secret ally that we'll deal with more later. And that's episode 8.
Rob, Zabaro as a character, I thought that was a really unique idea that, there has to be a Bizarro for the Bizarros on Bizarro World. And in order to have a Bizarro for the Bizarros on Bizarro World, he has to be someone, with an intellect and an intelligence. And I thought that was that was great. And his loneliness is this very tragic thing, this intelligence that he has in this senseless world. It's a very tragic element of his character, and you can really feel the depth of his loneliness on this world. I thought that was really, really interesting.
Yes, I agree. I've actually never thought about it that way before, Alan. You're absolutely right. He is a Bizarro for the other Bizarros. That's a great way of putting it. What I kind of like about him though as well is he's a bit conceited, and he's a bit full of himself, and he's a bit pretentious. And you do feel sorry for him, and you feel a lot of sympathy for him, but he's also kind of got his head up his ass a little bit, and like it's kind of fitting that he doesn't get to leave Bizarro World, because he nearly needs to grow as a person and like accept himself and the world around him a little bit more before he's entitled to leave, I think, which was a nice way to do it. But in saying that, like, it's just written so well that you do still feel a lot of sympathy for him. And I love the bit near the end where Superman's about to pass out with pain, and Zabaro says something like, "Oh, you probably never even read my poetry, did you?" And he's like, "Yeah, I did. It was beautiful. Like, you should keep it up." It was just such a pure Superman moment that he would take the time to read the poetry, Yeah, no, it's an absolutely lovely issue. Again, I know you guys had issue with it. I think it's a classic Grant Morrison example of, this is one you need to read a couple of times to really appreciate it, because the Bizarro speak, it is frustrating the first couple of times you read it, and it's like it turns your brain in knots trying to make sense of some of it. But like once you kind of like soak it all in enough times, it really clicks, and it just becomes hilarious. It's really, really funny the way he writes some of this, or the way they write some of this. Like when Superman finally realizes the way to communicate with these Bizarros is to say everything backwards. It's hilarious. He's like, "Me have nothing to say and nothing you'd want to see. Go away." And Bizarro's like, him am no get my attention. Me am no can't wait to hear what him am no say next. It's just, and then Superman describes it as being a totally non-constructive waste of time. And they're like, "Oh yeah, let's get to work." It's just, it's really, really good, And the thing I like about it, I know what you're saying, Anthony, like it is ridiculous, and it's like they've gone totally overboard with it. But that's just the childlike fun of the Silver Age. Like, these are the things you think about with Bizarro as a kid. You're like, well, if that's the backwards version of this, wouldn't it be like that? And it's like your mind starts like going through all the different scenarios. Like, I love when they introduce the Justice League and Wonder Woman is just an ugly clay statue, and Batman is dead because his parents shot him, which is just it's all so well thought out, and it's just a giant gag. Like, but then it all circles back to Zabaro and this kind of beautiful, poignant moment where he's getting Superman to read his poetry. Like, I really, really enjoyed these issues on this go around, I have to say.
With Zabaro, a couple of things. One, yeah, the notion that he's the Bizarro among the Bizarros, I like that. And very recently I read Superman 140 from the Silver Age, the first appearance of Blue Kryptonite. And there it's a similar sort of thing where Bizarro Superman and Bizarro Lois have a child who looks human and is the outcast. So it is kind of that intriguing idea. Plus it gives us a way to have some conversations on Bizarro World, not in Bizarro speak, even though we've come around on that, but still it was nice to have a little bit of a breather for it. I like the character of Zabaro, but at the same time, it's also like, buddy, read the room. Like, Superman's fighting for his life here. He's like crawling, trying to make it to this rocket. Did you read my poetry? But to your point about being a bit self-absorbed, I think that rings true. And then, I guess the other big picture thing about this, that when I read this for the first time in the mid-aughts, this did not register with me. But in recent years, reading more about these issues, having conversations with them, I think what this issue is really kind of dialing into is this idea of depression and this weight, this crushing weight that is bearing down on Superman as kind of, in a physical way, but also kind of mirroring the personal journey and the emotion that he's wrestling with as he's nearing his end. So I think we're very much meant to kind of key into that stand-in for depression here.
Can I just very, very quickly, just a couple of really just slight touches on the artwork that I really liked. I love just how Frank Whiteley draws Superman getting progressively weaker, and it's very kind of evocative of Dark Knight Returns when he's just this like shriveled little skeletal creature, and the blood on his face, like his nose kind of bleeding as he's talking to Zabaro about his poetry. And then there's a lovely panel where they light the fuse on the rocket that's supposed to send Superman into space or whatever, and Zabaro accidentally blows it out, and there's just this lovely trail of frozen vapor. It's just really, really nice coloring and artwork there. And then Superman finally like being blasted into space. It reminded me of that movie The Martian with Matt I was about to say Matt Damon, where he literally goes into space and he's just like exposed to the elements in a spacesuit. It's totally ridiculous, but it reminded me of that. And again, it's just a great panel of Superman, like the stress on Superman's face, and he's like, yes, fantastic stuff. Frank Whiteley is just absolutely surpasses himself. Anthony, you're a big Power Rangers fan. Did Lois's pink jumpsuit remind you of anything?
Oh, I didn't make that connection. Now I'm kicking myself, but you know I love my Power Rangers.
She looks exactly like Kimberly in those panels, I think. Just the pink jumpsuit and even her kind of petite build in this, just she looks very like Kimberly, yeah.
It's the characterization of Superman, I think, that I really enjoy in this, and that even when he's literally being crushed to death by, like you said, Anthony, the depression, or more so like in the real world, just the weight of what's going on, literally the gravity, and that he still cares so much for this person that he doesn't know, that he's never met before. And, his thoughts are still with him, where, it would be so easy at that point to just become so selfish and so introverted and, just trying to sort out your own problems. But that's what makes him Superman. And again, as is the ongoing theme throughout all of these issues, it's just the reflections of other characters, the reflections of himself through other characters that I've really, really enjoyed. Be it, Lex Luthor or Bizarro or Atlas or Samson, all these different kind of inverted Supermen. I just think it's so fascinating. I really, really enjoyed that aspect of the book. And we get that again then as we move on into episode 9, Curse of the Replacement Superman. And out of all of the issues, I find this is probably the most straightforward. Like, I could imagine this being like an episode of the animated series or something. It's a fairly straightforward setup. Superman returns to Earth and he discovers that 2 astronauts, 2 explorers from Krypton have survived and have arrived on Earth. Burrell and Lilo or Lilo? I think I pronounce it Lilo, is it?
It actually is Lilo. And the reason I know that is in the notes at the back of the Absolute Edition, Grant Morrison literally says that Lilo is named after inflatable pool furniture. So people on this side of the Atlantic, anyone who's gone on a sunshine holiday to like Spain or Portugal or somewhere like that, where you go away, because here in Ireland we have crap weather all the time, and whenever we get sunshine we become a bit weird about it. And when you go away to these sunny countries and there's a pool in the hotel, your parents buy this thing called a Lilo, which is like a sun lounger that you blow up and you sit on in the pool, basically. You float around in it. And that's what she's named after, which I think is hilarious.
But Superman returns and he sees all these Kryptonian structures kind of superimposed over the skyscrapers in Metropolis. And he comes to discover, like I said, that Burrell and Lilo have arrived. And he approaches them. They're out stopping a volcano, and he approaches them, with warmth and kindness and welcomes them to Earth. And I think it's inferred that he's hoping that they can replace him, that they can become the protectors of Earth, and that they can fill the space that he's going to void, that he's going to leave behind. And we quickly find out that's not really the case, that they're very selfish. They have this superiority complex. They view Earth and the inhabitants of Earth as kind of lesser beings. And then the ultimate insult, he follows them back to the Fortress of Solitude. They've invaded the fortress. Not only have they invaded the fortress and trespassed in the fortress, but they mock it, and they have they've destroyed the statues of Jor-El and Lara and replaced them with statues of themselves. And they're just not very nice people, and their intention becomes clear very quickly. Their intention is to overthrow the Earth and to rule the Earth. Obviously, Superman has a big issue with that. And we get this great fight where Burrell basically throws Superman into the moon and he damages the moon. We see this huge crack. I can picture that. To be fair, the way it's drawn, it's almost as if it's animated. Like you can see the movement, you can feel the movement as this battle is going on. And Superman looks up and he goes, "You've broken the moon," and there's a huge battle then in Metropolis. You can see in the first panel, I didn't notice this, and it's something I love about the book. You read it over and over again and you see these little things that you never caught before. And very early on, when Burrell and Lilo are stopping the volcano, Burrell turns to Lilo because they're madly in love. It's one thing, they're Burrell and Lilo are madly in love with each other, and he turns to her and he says, "When did your eyes become green? They seem more dazzling than ever." And that is an omen of the future, because it turns out that while traveling through space, they developed this kryptonite poisoning. And the story ends with Superman turning around and offering to, or doing his best to save their lives. And the only solution he comes up with is to send them to the Phantom Zone. And he shows them kindness and he shows them grace. And they're stunned by this, and they come to the conclusion that Superman is not weak, that he represents the best of their people and the best of Krypton. And the story ends with them being sent Krypton. I love the scene. I skipped over the scene. There's a lovely scene where Superman dresses up or becomes Clark Kent, goes to the Daily Planet, and they arrive at the Daily Planet and they're talking to Superman as he's standing in front of a window with the entire Daily Planet cast, and they obviously can't figure out, or they haven't put two and two together and realised, because he's like, why? They're like, why are you dressed up like this? Why would you waste your time with this charade? And Clark does that great thing where he uses his clumsiness to try and get out of the situation. Steve Lombard's hair catches fire and causes a distraction. Love all that stuff. I'd love to see loads of that kind of horseplay and stuff in the movie when it comes out. But yeah, so Lilo collapses, and like I said, Superman brings them back to the fortress, and they come up with this plan to send them to the Phantom Zone. And Superman, the story ends with Superman kind of saying, you know, that he trusts that Brell and Lilo will put manners on the criminals in the Phantom Zone and keep them in line going forward. And it's a very simple story, especially in the context of the entire book, where, you know, there's lots of interpretations and reading. There isn't much of that in this, but I think it's a very solid entry into the 12 issues. Anybody have any thoughts on issue 9?
Yeah, I thought this was a really strong one. Even just from the jump, the fact that he crash lands into a circus tent, right? A nice homage to the original inspiration for the costume, the circus strongman business. So I thought that was cool. I thought, yeah, the business about lighting the toupee on fire with the heat vision is great. I feel like there's a decent chance we could see a version of that on the big screen, especially since we know we're getting Steve Lombard and all of that. But yeah, just the fact that, as always, with everyone, and especially with these counterparts, like you said, another example of these analogs of Superman, that he leads with kindness, and the fact that they don't go begrudgingly into the zone at the end. They're not still, you know, crying for vengeance, right? Like, they are truly struck by the kindness that he shows them. And then my last thing that jumped out at me is, and this leads us into the next issue, is just the fact that, you know, there is this discussion about how he has not imposed his ways on the people of Earth, but something does start to shift a little bit, where he's like, you know, as a scientist's son, like, my nature has been to observe. He's like, maybe I could have done more. And then we'll kind of see where that leads in the next issue. But yeah, I thought this was a really strong one.
I kind of have mixed feelings about this one. I think it's the weakest issue. I don't think that's a damning criticism either, because this is just such a good story. I will say, though, this time around, I did find myself enjoying it a lot more than I remembered. And you know, it's so funny, because, like, when we were doling these out initially, I just picked my favorite issues, and I kind of regret not picking one that I sort of didn't love, and then I could kind of re-examine it, you know? You
could have gone on more of a journey like Anthony did, you see, that's the...
Yeah, absolutely. But I'll say there's a couple of interesting things I really like about it. I mean, I keep talking about the art, the antenna things they wear, like that look like mohawks. I absolutely love them. They're so cool. Their yellow costumes, they just really feel like something out of the Silver Age. There's got to be like 70 stories just like this in the Silver Age, where a bunch of bad guys from Krypton turn up and Superman has to put them in the Phantom Zone or fight them or whatever. Like, there's some great ones from over the years. And I really like, as you said, Alan, when they have the fight and he gets punched into the moon, you exactly right. You can actually feel the movement as the crack ripples throughout the moon. It feels like you're looking at an animated image. I don't know if we mentioned when they fixed the moon and they used the bridges to stitch it back together. Just a really cool idea. I really like the heat vision on the hairpiece. And yeah, the moment where they actually die of the kryptonite poisoning, it's just a really grim or they don't die, but they go blind, and it's really grim and grotesque. Like, their eyes actually cross.
It reminds me, I want to say this, it reminds me of, if you ever watch Total Recall with Arnold Schwarzenegger, there's a scene at the end of the movie where he's on Mars and his eyes start bulging out. Yeah, that's exactly what it's like. It's very grotesque.
What I would say, though, is I'd say my biggest problem with it is that Lilo really isn't very well drawn out as a character, and it's kind of a shame. And for me, that makes the love story element of it fall a bit. It just feels a bit rote. Like, it feels a bit kind of... I was, when I came away from it today, I was like, I would absolutely love to read an issue before this, kind of detailing their adventures before, because they're said to be these legendary Kryptonian spacemen that have wandered the cosmos for a century or for decades or whatever. And Superman already knows about them. And I'm like, I kind of want to read that issue, and I want to see how they fell in love and stuff. And that would make the ending that bit more poignant. Because I mentioned the notes at the end of the book, and maybe this colored my opinion of the story. The notes at the end of the book have this massive, like, biography of Bar-El and all the kind of thought Grant Morrison put into that character. And he's supposed to have a Scottish accent, by the way. I don't know if you guys picked up on that, but he's literally supposed to be Scottish. And there's a bit where he calls him a wee a wee soft scientist son. And like you're supposed to hear that in Scottish, which I think is really cool. But like Lilo, literally the only thing Grant Morrison had to say about Lilo was, I took her name from a piece of inflatable pool furniture. I was like, oh, that's a bit of a bummer. Like, you didn't put the same amount of thought into the, So this is the one story where I'm like, this could have done with a bit more to it. Is my only point. But in saying that, I agree with what you guys were saying. Like, it is poignant at the end. It's absolutely lovely that they're so struck by Superman's kindness that they become his ally, and the idea that they live out their days now in the Phantom Zone, just like keeping order in the I thought that's a really fun idea, So mixed feelings, but I really kind of had a newfound appreciation reading it this time.
Anthony, can I ask you a question? In terms of, say, Kryptonians in general, do you have a preference in, say, the depiction of Kryptonians? I mean, do you prefer a Kryptonian society that's, more evolved and there's no chaos, there's no war, there's no disease, there's no, almost like Star Trek, there's no issues, there's no interpersonal conflict, all that kind of stuff? Or do you prefer a Kryptonian race where, there are assholes and there are these kind of people who will come to Earth if they got the chance and take it over? Like, the impression I get here is this happened very quickly. Barel and Lilo's personalities before they arrived on Earth weren't too dissimilar than what they would have been like before they were exposed to the yellow sun and got their superpowers. Do you just have a preference in general about how Krypton or Kryptonians are depicted?
Yeah, I mean, I would say generally I like a Krypton where there's stuff going on, not where it's just kind of this utopia and they've sorted everything out. And clearly, even in an instance like that, they still can't save themselves. But that aside, I like when there's some conflict and we can kind of sink our teeth into it more. And I mean, even watching the sci-fi series Krypton, I was like, I really enjoyed that. That had been a gap of mine for a while, and I'm like, this is great, and there's a ton of stuff going on there. So yeah, no, I like seeing more of those interpersonal conflicts and different personalities and whatnot. Again, depends on what type of story you're telling and how much place there is for Krypton and what role it's serving. But generally speaking, yeah, no, I like a Krypton where it can lend itself to something like this.
Where do you stand on it, Rob? Do you have a preference?
Yeah, and it's a really interesting question. I've kind of a couple of things. I really like the idea that Krypton's vanity was its downfall, so that they were really evolved and really advanced and all that kind of thing, but that they were also very aware of that, and they thought that they could do no wrong, and that's what brought about their downfall. And these guys in this story are very much of that ilk. Like they think they're so much better than humanity, and that's like the key lesson Superman learns that sets him apart from them and the villains he faces, is that he doesn't think he's above anyone, and that's one of the things I love about Superman. One of the kind of cool elements that I like from the movies is this idea that Krypton is so advanced and the people are so peaceful that that pure, like, essential goodness inevitably leads to just cancerous rebel elements, they call them. So like the whenever someone is evil on Krypton, they're so evil that they're just like despotic monsters from hell, like General Zod. I kind of like that idea too, sort of like the dark side in Star Wars. It's just like there has to be balance. Like if there is something so pure and so good in the universe, there has to be an evil to counteract it, and that's why you have people as evil as General Zod on Krypton. I kind of like that idea too, but I mostly agree with you, Anthony. I think that there needs to be conflict and vanity and flaws on Krypton in order for it to die,
Issue 10, Rob, Never Ending. Can you walk us through this one?
Now, fellows and girls, welcome to the best Superman comic book ever, of all time. This is the one. It's the best issue ever. Even Neil Bailey from the Superman homepage, the guy who got so sick of Smallville that he refused to review it midway through season 9. Anthony's wearing his season 9 Smallville t-shirt right now. Neil Bailey walked away. He hated it so much. He said that this was the best Superman comic ever, and I agree with him. Basically, this is kind of just Superman playing the hits. It's an entire issue of Superman just doing incredible things. We open on Superman taking a group of terminally ill children on a sightseeing trip to Egypt. He lifts the entire school bus through Egypt as they pass the pyramids. It's absolutely lovely.
Just of note before we move on from that, this is the second time I've recorded with Anthony where Superman has gone to Egypt. I just wanted to highlight that because he did it in Star of Fate as well.
Oh yeah, that's right.
That's right.
I forgot about that. By the way, Anthony, on the subject of your George Reed, I listened to your Through the Time Barrier episode there recently. I had a lot of fun with that one. We did an episode on that with Matt ages ago. We were a lot harsher on it than you were. But a lot of fun. If people haven't listened to that, check it out. So yeah, he drops the kids back to the hospice. The doctor is like, or the nurse, sorry, is overcome with thanks. She's like, God bless you. I've never seen them so excited. You know, their visits are all they have to look forward to. We see Superman's wicked sick autobiography writing device. So it's like this thing strapped to his head that uses heat, like lasers, I guess, to do like a big hieroglyphic inscription on the wall in Kryptonian. Now, I don't have my Kryptonian legend to hand, so I can't tell. Is this the thing they do in 90s comics where the symbols just match the Latin alphabet and it's just English? I'll need to check that again, or maybe someone can let us know in the comments. But we see Superman refers to the fact that his cells are continuing to degrade and he doesn't have much time left. We cut to the bottle city of Kandor. And you know, they're having this debate about what the fate of Kandor should be with Superman's oncoming demise. And there's this lovely moment where Van Z, one of the top counselors, he mentions that he found another grey hair, and his wife says, well, it makes you look distinguished. Just a really, really nice little moment. I thought that was gorgeous. Leo Quintum is sent into the Bottle City, where he has this grand proposition he wants to make to them, and Superman hands him this cool kind of gravity staff thing, sort of like the Riddler staff, but it means that he can withstand the heavier gravity of Kandor. Really interesting character moment here, and I'm going to come back to this in a sec. They tell Leo Quintum that, look, you know, we understand the gravity's heavier here. You can sit if you want. And he says, I'll stand. Which reminded me of sort of something another character might do. We see the infant universe of Qweq. That's QWEWQ. And Superman describes how he wants to see a world without him in it, and how it would survive and how it would evolve without him. So he creates a planet using his heat vision. He gives a nano optical transfusion of pure solar energy. He creates a planet called Earth Q, which as the issue goes on, we begin to realize, oh, this is just our world. Like, because we see the formation of society without superheroes. We see Friedrich Nietzsche writing down the legend of Superman, and we see like the birth of religion and all these things. We obviously get this incredible moment where Superman stops a runaway train, and a doctor is talking to a patient saying, oh, you know, stay there, I'm on my way, or something like that. Superman fights a guy called Meccano Man, who's just this kind of crazed old man in a giant robot suit. Lois corners him because at this point in the story, she is aware of the fact that he is dying. And I wanted to ask you guys about this exchange. You know, he's being really evasive and he doesn't want to talk about it. And he has this moment where they embrace, and then he says to her, our biology is completely incompatible. We could never have children. Never more than this. What do you think he was doing there, guys?
I guess trying to make it easier for her to come to terms with this, that there wouldn't have been a future for them anyway. I mean, we know he's going to, there's more to come on his genetic code and its compatibility with humans and all of that. But yeah, I hadn't really poured over that moment, but
I feel like my read on it this time around was he was trying to push her away, because he didn't want to let her in, because he's so overcome with grief about the fact that he's going to die and she won't be in his life anymore. I also kind of thought it was a bit naive of him to even assume that she couldn't love him if they couldn't have children. You know, that sort of way. It just feels like a dumb man thing to do. And I love it's such a great Lois Lane moment that she loves Superman so much that she believes in him, and she believes that he will find a way. She is now preaching what he practices, you know, which is so Lois Lane. And you know, Superman says, I have to go, Lois, someone needs me. And we have the best page of the best Superman comic of all time. We see a poor goth girl on top of a building, drops her phone off the side of the building. It's implied that she's about to take her life. Superman turns up. Your doctor really did get held up, Regan. It's never as bad as it seems. You're much stronger than you think you are. Trust me. And they have that hug, and it's Oh man, it's incredible stuff. It's so good. Now, should you tell someone who's about to take their life it's never as bad as it seems? I don't know, but it is a very human moment. You know, I've been told by people who suffer from severe depression that's not the thing that you say, you know, so, but at the same time, Superman does not necessarily need to be a trained grief counselor. He just has to be human. And I think...
Well, I think it's just the fact that because they sprinkle it throughout the issue that, you know, her doctor's on the phone and you can hear his speech bubbles throughout. So Superman is kind of following this conversation as it's going, as he's moving, as he's dealing with other things. It's just the fact that he's there. Like there's the little panel there where, you know, she obviously there's the big long panel where she drops the phone, and then there's that panel where she's just closing her eyes and she's about to jump, and it's just the fact that he's there. He has her hand on her shoulder and he's there for her, and that's what she needs. She needs that human comfort and she needs someone to hold her, and that's what he does. I think it's absolutely phenomenal.
Yeah, it's pure compassion as well. Like, we've had so many arguments over the years of like, oh, you know, Superman wouldn't do that, and you know, he all the kind of Snyder related arguments we have about, oh, you know, it's one life versus 1,000 and all this, but like every life is so precious to Superman, you know, and it's perfectly exemplified here.
I would make the point that I wonder would it be more powerful if there was no speech whatsoever on this page and it was just the art.
That's a really that's a really great thought. And I think there might be something to that. It's interesting. So our fellow Superman podcaster, Tyler from Krypton Report, he pointed me in the direction of the J. Michael Straczynski Grounded storyline. Not tremendously well regarded, but there's a similar type of sequence where Superman talks someone down, but it's a whole scene. It goes on for multiple pages. You get far more back and forth. This obviously is a much more succinct version, but Alan, to your point, it's like, yeah, I think you probably could take this even further and really just have it be the silent thing, just that he's there and he embraces her. That actually could have worked really nicely as well.
I think you might be onto something there, Alan, because if there's, I mentioned like it's maybe a touch out of step to say it's never bad, it's never as bad as it seems. I feel like that's nearly even condescending. I don't know, but I know exactly the page you're talking about in Grounded, Anthony, and that is like a way bigger dialogue. And there's a bit in that where Superman's like, if you really think you're never going to be truly happy again, you know, you can take that step now, and I won't catch you and all that.
Yeah. He makes her that promise of, he's like, if you really feel like you'll never have a good day or a happy day ever again, he's like, I won't stop you. But if you think there's a chance that you'll even have one happy day, don't do this.
Yeah.
And, you know, he gets through. It's a very powerful scene.
And it's lovely and it is powerful. But again, I have to reference the fact that, like, I've heard people with severe depression talk about that. And they've said that, you know, when you go through these extreme lows, it's not about feeling that you're never going to be happy again. It's about the fact that you can't deal with the extreme lows. You know, so it's that issue of, you know, I don't think that's the right way to handle a scene like that, but it is a powerful scene. I also want to reference Superman and Lois did a really, really cool inversion of this. Well, not an inversion, but a remixed version of this, where it was actually Lois talking to the lady, or I think it was a woman on the ledge, and it was so well done. It was absolutely beautiful. I think it was it season 1 or 2?
I thought it was 3. I don't know. There's only 4. I know it wasn't 4.
Maybe it was 3. Yeah, it was 3.
Yeah, was there not a scene in 3 where she talks someone down off the top of a hospital when she's going through her cancer treatment? Is there not something?
It definitely was 3. You're right, because she had the cancer. Yeah. Brilliant scene, and a great, like, kind of a crowning moment of awesome for Elizabeth Tulloch as Lois. So we cut back to Kandor and the kind of Kandor Power Rangers. They vow to help the Kandor Emergency Corps. They have a plan to save Superman, and we cut back to Earth Q. We see civilization being formed. Nice bit of continuity here. Superman replaces the last of Earth's bridges, and I think the last couple of times I read this, I was kind of like, when did Earth's bridges get destroyed? And then this time I was like, oh yeah, literally the last issue. When the guys used them to stitch back up the moon. Now, I want to talk to you guys about this. We see Superman talk to Lex in prison, and it's a really wonderful Superman and Lex moment. He says, I'm dying. The world is yours, at least for the 3 weeks you have left before they execute you. Lex, you've got 3 weeks. I challenge you. All the things you said you're going to do, it's not too late. Put your brilliant mind to work. I know there's good in you. And then Lex responds in a perfectly Lex Luthor way. He spits at the glass and just glares at Superman. And that's the end of the scene. And then a couple of pages later, we see Superman talking to Leo Quintum on Mars, of all places, where they've successfully released the bottle city of Kandor essentially into the wilds. They've opened up the bottle and they've just set it down on Mars, and they're gonna start a new Krypton there. Brilliant solution to the bottle city of Kandor that had never occurred to me as a kid, but it's a perfect solution. But he gives Leo Quintum his genetic genome. He has boiled it down into a liquid form, and he's given it to him. And Leo Quintum says, "Are you saying you'd entrust the responsibility of your genome to me? I could be the devil himself for all you know, Superman." Huh? And then the next panel, Superman says, "Yeah, along with the instructions on this is how much I trust you, Leo." I'm like, man, that's cool. That I know I said last time, I was like, I'm not going to double down and insist that the fan theory is the case. But you read these pages, you're like, no, man, sorry. Leo Quintum is Lex Luthor from the future. He's reformed and he's traveled back in time, and now he's Superman's best friend. I completely believe it now. Where do you guys stand on that?
I think it's a possibility, but I think, you know, if the writer says that that's not the case, that maybe we should listen to him a bit.
The writer didn't say it. Frank Quitely said it. So for all we know, Grant Morrison might still be the case.
Yeah, I love it as a theory. I love it as a fan theory. I love it as a theory. What do you think, Anthony?
Yeah, I'm open to it. Like, that's the thing. I would not sit here and be like, no, like, we have to debunk this. It's like, no, I think there is definitely something intriguing and very interesting. I mean, if you ask me, what's the more interesting version, that he's a reformed Lex from the future or he's just some guy? I mean, like, just some guy, yeah. No, it's probably more interesting if it's that. Yeah.
That's an excellent point, actually. Yeah.
So the Kandor Power Rangers, or whatever they're called, Emergency Space Police or whatever, they fail to stop Superman's blood vessels.
I love that name. If I ever start a rock band, that's what I'm going to call it.
Emergency Space Police. They failed to stop Superman's blood cancer, whatever it's called, but they do the next best thing. He brings them into the children's hospital we saw at the start of the issue, and they fly off, and it's implied that they're gonna cure all the cancer of these poor children, which is so lovely. We end on Earth Q again, and we see a hand drawing a panel, and it's a golden age drawing of Superman, and we see the speech bubble. This is going to change everything. And oh my god, it's so good. There's an epilogue page then where we see Superman writing his last will and testament, and he to Lois Lane he leaves the headline of to Clark Kent he leaves the headline of the century: Superman dead by Clark Kent, and we end on a cliffhanger there. Such a powerful episode or issue, guys. What'd you make of it?
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. It's packed full of so much great content. I just thought it was great. I love the fact that all the civilization on Earth Q, you know, evolves in the space of like tenths of a second. Like, I love that about it. And then I had actually forgotten that the second to last page, you know, it's implied that it's you know, Siegel and Shuster creating Superman, and I completely forgot that that's how it ended. And when I turned the page, I was like, oh my god, it's absolutely beautiful. I thought it was so wonderful.
Yeah, it's so good. I mean, this idea that in a world where Superman doesn't exist, someone would create him, right? Because the idea is just that powerful. And then when we get to the end of this story, in a world where now Superman is no longer, well, what are they going to do? What's the page that we end on? But I love that. That was great. All the business with Kandor, just the fact that, I mean, there's no way he could be going through his final days and performing all of these feats and not take care of Kandor, right? This has been hanging over him. So I like that. And I agree. It's like such a clever, obvious solution to the problem.
And he even says it. How did I never think of this before? It's such a simple solution to this problem.
And the whole Kandor squad, right out of the Silver Age comics, there were always, you know, the Superman Rescue Squad or Emergency Squad or whatever permutation we saw over the years. But I really like that. But you know what I always forget about, and then it hits me and I tear up at the end every time when he leaves the headline to Clark. And he says, to Clark Kent, who never let me forget what it was like to be an ordinary downtrodden man. Oh, I get choked up like every time I read that. You know, we've all thought and spoken a lot about the dual identity and which is the true version and all of that. And right, I always land on the side of there's really three. Clark on the farm is the true version, and all of that. But even in an instance, kind of in the classic traditional sense where Superman is the true persona and then Clark is the cover, it's like even in a scenario like that, it's still allowing him to kind of experience humanity in this different way. And I just, oh man, I love that moment. I love the story that he gives to Clark in the end.
It's really nice as well. And I sorry to keep bringing up the Magan novels, but Elliot S. Magan describes Clark in those novels as almost being Superman's friend. As in, like, he literally does think of him as a friend because it enables him to exactly like Morrison is saying here, you know, he never forgets how it feels to be a downtrodden ordinary man. It's his link to humanity. And there's a moment in one of those novels similar to this where the identity is exposed and everyone, not just Superman, everyone treats it as a death because Clark Kent is now gone and he ceases to exist. And Superman treats it like the death of his friend, and it's the exact same way here. I thought that was lovely as well.
And then I don't think we've mentioned this yet, but I love this bit too, that the young woman that Superman saves on the building, right, is the ancestor of the person whose message he gets via that time capsule, right? Because he opens up that time capsule from the future, and the guy's talking about how he's like, my great grandmother owes you her life.
What? I never realized that. I never knew that.
You just blew my fucking mind, Anthony. I never copped that. Okay, folks, it doesn't get any better than that. Thanks for listening to All Star Superman.
That's the thing. Like, did I get that the first time I read it? No. You know what? If I'm going to be perfectly honest, I'm going to give credit to the guest I had on my show when we talked about it, Mike San Gregorio, because I feel like he probably clued me into it. But now it's just become so cemented. But stuff like that, or, you know, last in part one when we talked about the eyebrow on Lex in the prison. It's like there's stuff like that this really rewards multiple readings. Because in this one, with that message from the future, the language is it's spelled out very differently, right? So it's kind of hard to pinpoint exactly what's going on. But yeah, that's the whole business. That woman he saves is the ancestor of this person who's now giving him this warning about Solaris, the sun tyrant. So it's not that Superman needs a reward, right? He would have saved this woman no matter what. But I love that idea of like, yes, he saved this life. And now, you know, it comes back around and he's given this great benefit in the form of this warning.
That's why reading it is like reading All Star Superman is a journey that you should take multiple times. It's a road you should walk down over and over and over again. And that's something that has taken me a long time to learn when it comes to certain books and comic books in general, because I'm not renowned for my patience. And to sit down and take a journey over and over again and take something new from it, that has absolutely blown my mind, Anthony. That never occurred to me before. We'll move on, I think. Episode 11, Red Sunday. Straight into this issue, we have Lex being executed in prison. He's been strapped to the electric chair. One of the most evil moments I can remember involving Lex Luthor. You know, he's having a conversation with the guards. There's a priest there. The warden is there. It's made clear that one of the guards' sisters obviously has cancer. Lex turns and says, "Ask yourself how it feels to murder the genius who might have cured your sister's cancer with a cell phone and a safety pin." And the guard turns and says, "It's too late for her, Luthor, and too late for you." And, you know, they pull the lever. Lex Luthor gets fried. Big twist. Lex Luthor has taken the super serum and he has 24-hour superpowers. And he opens his eyes and he incinerates the guard with the words, "Give my regards to your sister." I mean, this guy is an evil bastard. And I love that straight out the gate, this is who we're dealing with. And he murders everybody in the room. He incinerates everybody with his heat vision. Superman is in the fortress talking to one of the robots, and he's cleaning out the pits, for want of a better word, where the Sun Eater was living, washing it down, and just engaging in a conversation with the robot in relation to maintaining a zoo there, that kind of all the animals have been affected, all the creatures have been affected by the Bizarros. And he's just having a nice little conversation with the robot. And then we get this unusual scene. I have to be honest, guys, the one thing that I've taken away from the book in total, I don't like the character of Lex's niece. I don't know what your thoughts are on her. I think she seems a little bit superfluous, and I just don't really know what the angle is with her. You know, she's sitting in Lex Luthor's base. Lex comes back. He shows her. He knocks down the door, shows her that he has superpowers, and he goes on one of his spiels. And he's building robots, and he's kind of giving her a weapon. He builds her this helmet, and he gives it to her, I presume, to control the robots. But the dialogue I found kind of difficult to follow. Maybe you can help me out here a little bit. But there's a sequence here where she turns to him as he's walking up the stairs, and kind of out of nowhere she goes, "I've been planning my wedding day. I'll be standing on an asteroid. hurtling towards Earth with my undead groom, will exchange vows, commit suicide, and bring about mass species extinction at the same time. And I was like, what is she talking about?
That's just fun Grant Morrison stuff, man. Just let it wash over you. It's great.
I'm just not a huge fan. I'm not a huge fan of the character. But he walks outside, he brings her outside, and lo and behold, it's Red Sunday. So there's a red sun in the sky. Solaris, the tyrant sun, has arrived, and Superman is suiting up to take him on. It turns out that they have been conspiring together to destroy Superman and take over the world. And Superman dons this cool kind of white solar suit.
White Ranger suit.
White Ranger suit, yeah. White Ranger suit. I assume it's just to try and focus his power, whatever's left.
Yeah.
It's always nice to wear a variant suit at the end of a comic or a movie for the final battle. He finishes his last will and testament, and the robots come out with him out to the front entrance of the Fortress of Solitude and say that they're going to lay down their life and stand against Solaris with him. One of the robots, very lonely panel there. One of the robots says that he's going to stay behind to maintain the fortress. And you can see him as the door closes, just walking back in for, I assume, what will be an eternity of solitude in the Fortress of Solitude, carrying out his duties to Superman. Now we have got this great shot where I think he kind of looks a little bit like Space Ghost, flying into space to take on the Tyrant Sun. And we get the Tyrant Sun, who may or may not, I assume that is him as depicted in the Superman, in the James Gunn Superman. We see a very similar type character in the trailers stuff for the Superman movie. I imagine that's meant to be Solaris as well. But the robots and Superman take on Solaris in space, and he does this great thing where he uses that energy field, that aura, to protect the robots and to protect himself from Solaris, and they all tackle him together. One of the robots, Robot 7, I think, sacrifices himself because it turns out that he was somehow corrupted into providing the formula for the super serum to Superman, or to Lex Luthor, and that's how Lex Luthor ended up developing the super serum that gave him the 24-hour superpowers. And he kind of sacrifices himself in order to redeem himself in Superman's eyes. And then you alluded to it earlier, Anthony, we get the Sun Eater turns up and tries to consume the Tyrant Sun, and the Tyrant Sun ends up killing the Sun Eater, which drives Superman into a rage. He pounds on him with his fists. They crash into Metropolis. There's this chaos raining down in Metropolis. Lois and Jimmy are in a taxi. As this is going on, Lex and his niece are attacking the city, and the Sun seems very small in Metropolis, I have to say, when it lands, because its plan is to take over the position of our actual sun and have the people of Earth pray to it. And if they don't pray to it and worship him, that he won't provide them with the light, or he'll end up consuming the Earth. But he's actually, when he lands on the street, he's much smaller than the sun. Yeah, so it's just this great scene where Superman converses with him and says, he kind of unleashes his power. He says, by the 24th century, I'm told you have been rehabilitated to work with humanity instead of against them. So he knows that Solaris survives and exists even if he unleashes on him, and he punches him so hard that he basically shuts down. And to the world, Superman has died in this moment. We shoot to Clark Kent. Clark Kent rushes into the Daily Planet to file his last to file the story basically of Superman's demise, and then he collapses onto the ground, and all the Daily Planet staff rush around him to provide him with aid, just as Lex Luthor bursts through the wall and basically says that Clark Kent is the least of their worries.
Lex Luthor wearing an outfit that looks pretty... Not only does it look pretty cool, it looks pretty similar to an outfit Leo Quintum wears in the rest of the story.
Oh, hang on. Let me just go back. I just have a record to change here. Just hang on 1 second.
Yeah.
Great recap. And I, going back to the beginning of it, the business about Lex surviving death by electric chair, grand tradition of this. We have seen this before in the Golden Age and in the Superboy television show. I mean, it's not, I don't feel like it's a complete Lex Luthor story if he doesn't survive death by electrocution at some point.
Let the record show that Anthony brought it up, not me. I was going to bring that up, but for once, somebody else did.
Yeah, you got to love it.
I told Rob, he can fire away and start his own Superboy podcast as long as we never have to talk about it on this show again, and he's broken the promise already.
And fellas, it's going to come up later on as well. Stay tuned.
Anthony, overall, what are your thoughts on this issue? Is this one that you're a fan of? Do you like where this is going? It really is an issue that's building up. There's a lot in it, but it is building up. This is obviously the penultimate issue, and it's leading up to the big conclusion, the big finale. But what do you think of issue 11 as a standalone?
Yeah, no, I enjoyed it. I mean, the robots sacrificing themselves and the Sun Eater sacrificing itself, that really hit. That really hit. So those moments really resonated. The bit where he delivers that final blow to Solaris asks for mercy, and he's like, "You'll live, you'll live," as he hits him. So yeah, that was. And then to your point or your question about Lex's niece, I'm kind of with you on this, Alan. I feel like, and I had to look her up, and she is a Silver Age character who was an adversary of Supergirl, and so I assume that's why she's here. But I don't know that she really serves much of a function. I mean, if at the end of the story she had some kind of turn and then she turned over a new leaf, she went in some direction, and it's like, oh, okay, like Lex had the end to his story, unless he becomes Leo Quintum, but the niece went on to do something else, but you don't really get that. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, she doesn't take me out of the story, but I don't need her per se. But I mean, other than being that callback, I don't know what she really serves.
I think if you removed her, you just wouldn't miss her. I don't really understand the purpose of her in the story as such. It's a nice little throwback. I didn't realize when I read this first, or even when I read it this time until we recorded the last episode, I didn't realize that she was a Silver Age character that had been brought back. But yeah, it's just the one character throughout the entire book that I haven't related to in any way. That's what I meant earlier with my kind of critique of her. Rob, what about you?
I like Nostalgia, and I'll tell you why. First of all, she's a nice throwback to just Lex having a dopey sidekick. Like, she's very much in the vein of Otis, and more accurately, Lenny Luthor, who was also his relative, And it just gives him someone to bounce off. I love that she's just this kind of pretentious, self-absorbed kind of Grant Morrison
millennial.
Yeah, totally. Like, just like she's kind of like a dark inversion of Jimmy, nearly. So I do like her for that. I think that's the purpose she serves. It's just Lex, just someone for Lex to bounce off and feel superior to. I want to talk a little bit about Lex's hideout, which is really, really cool. Silver Age Lex would always have these elaborate hideouts, and obviously we saw it in Superman the movie. And Nostalgia refers to being in an authentic Luthor's lair, which is really cool. If you look at the suits, the costumes in the back, a lot of them are actually from like Silver Age comics. Definitely. And now I couldn't possibly tell you which ones, but like they look very like the one with the yellow chest plate. I believe that's some kind of kryptonite looking thing he has on it. And then definitely the one with the LL in it looks very similar to ones that he would have worn throughout the Silver Age as well. You'll notice there's a bust of Albert Einstein there, which I loved. Bronze Age Lex is obsessed with Albert Einstein. There's a absolutely beautiful Elliot S. Maggin story called The Einstein Connection, where he breaks out of prison just so that he can visit the Albert Einstein statue and wish him a happy birthday, which is one of my favorite Lex Luthor stories ever. There's a very Easter egg looking chunk of kryptonite sitting under Nostalgia's boot there, and if I'm not mistaken, that looks like it might be a callback to the hunk of kryptonite from Superman the movie. Now, I could be totally off there, but it has that kind of shape to it. So that's always how I read that. And I just love I love the various kind of contraptions and robots and stuff hanging around the lair. We see Lex repairing, or either building or repairing one at super speed, all in the space of one panel. Really, really cool stuff. Love Superman's White Ranger suit. And when he's fighting Tyrant Sun, Anthony, you mentioned there, the bit with the Sun Eater is just so moving and so touching. And I just love the notion that the Sun Eater should be this fearsome, like, horrible creature of death and misery, and Superman has still found beauty in this kind of wild animal of a thing, and he's so moved by him that he becomes enraged when he's killed. There's something really lovely about that. And if I'm not mistaken, didn't Superman lose his powers around the time of the wedding in the 90s because of a Sun Eater, Anthony? Is that similar to this?
Yeah, so basically that was the premise of the Final Night storyline, where, a Sun Eater was consuming our sun, and then, I mean, spoiler alert, but Hal Jordan sacrifices himself to defeat the Sun Eater and reignite the sun. But Superman lost his powers because the sun was depleted. But curiously, they did not return even when the sun did. And so he was without his powers for a stretch, including the wedding and honeymoon. And then he got his powers back right after that. And you know how he got him back, guys? They threw him in the sun and he got his powers back. What else?
And was the Sun Eater, did he look like this? Was it the same kind of idea?
Oh, yeah, that's, basically like the black, like the tentacles and whatnot. Yeah, that's kind of my memory of it.
I really like when the Tyrant Sun is blasted back into Earth, and the way Quietly colors, or apologies, maybe the colorist was different to Frank Quietly. I'll look that up later. But the way they color it, the way it sort of takes on this kind of pale blue pallor as it gets weaker and weaker, and then finally when it deactivates, it's just completely blue. Always really, really liked that coloring. And yeah, I am a fan of Lex Luthor's swashbuckling looking gear he wears in that final splash page. He's got those swashbuckler boots. He's got those pants that come out at the quads. I don't know what you call them. They're really sharp. And he's got that bitchin' green trench coat. Any cosplayers out there who want to dress as this version of Lex Luthor, send us a pic, because that's badass.
Yeah, that would be cool to see. Yeah.
So, Rob, we've gone through 11 issues of the 12. Will you take us into the concluding issue/episode of All-Star Superman, issue 12, Superman in Excelsis?
Yes. So, I forgot I was doing this one. Yeah. So, we open on Krypton. Superman is talking to Jor-El. It's pretty evident straight away that he's having some kind of death vision. Like, he's complaining that Jor-El has taken him out of the Science Plaza during a major core quake. And Jor-El says, come with me. I'll explain everything on the way. He basically explains to him that Jor-El is dead, Krypton is dead, and all of this is kind of a death vision, and that Superman's Kryptonian physiology is such that they adapted over millennia to store energy from the Red Star Rao. And that what's happening to Superman right now is he's not actually dying. He's undergoing a mutation, a conversion to solar radio consciousness, and that he must surrender to this process. But Superman argues that, no, look, I have one more feat, one more great feat to accomplish before I die, basically. So it's basically Jor-El asking him to step into the light, basically. And Superman's like, no, I have to stop Lex Luthor. We cut back to Earth. Lex is confronting the Daily Planet crew, not unlike Zod in Superman 2. He's kind of lording over them while Superman is out of commission. And we cut back to Krypton. We see the firefalls, which are mentioned a lot in Silver Age comics. We see Superman and Jor-El fly over the firefalls, and then we cut back to Earth as Clark kind of triumphantly wakes up. There is a great moment where Lex is really losing his temper with the Daily Planet crew, and he's like, oh, who's going to stop the most powerful man in the world? And clumsy Clark says, there's me, Lex. And he says that he should stop threatening his friends, and he shoots him with a gravity gun. And there's a lovely panel where it's clearly no longer Clark Kent, even though he's wearing Clark Kent's clothes. It's clearly Superman shooting the gravity gun. His posture has changed and his jaw has tightened, and he's clearly Superman. And in typical All-Star Superman fashion, all the other characters are like, oh, it wasn't Clark at all, it's just Superman in disguise. Like they assume that Clark is safe somewhere else, and Superman is fed up trying to explain this to people. He's like, oh yeah, Clark's safe, don't worry about it. Jimmy has a spare costume for him, because of course he does, and he changes into Superman. And we cut to this awesome fight, because Superman is basically powerless at this point because of the red sun and so on, and he has to keep shooting Lex with this gravity gun. And then we get there's a great fight. It stretches over a couple of pages. We get this absolutely wonderful moment where Lex is talking to Nostalgia, and he starts breaking down, because he has this moment where he kind of catches himself, and all of his kind of super senses activate at once, and he starts having these kind of bursts of just pure thought, where he's piecing together his, I guess his super intelligence is kicking into gear or something, and he's talking about how, he's seeing the machinery and wire connecting and separating everything since it all began. It's like he's trying acid for the first time. And we get my favorite Lex Luthor panel in a comic book. It's Lex touching his chin and coming to and breaking down in tears, and he says this is how he sees all the time, every day, like it's all just us in here together. and we're all we've got. It's such a touching moment. And then we learn that because he's been shot with the gravity gun so much, his metabolism has kicked into overdrive, which has led to the super serum wearing out, and this enables Superman to punch him out. And he has the final word where he says, you know, you could have saved the world years ago if it mattered to you, Luthor. And then, oh man, we get probably my second favorite moment in the whole book. Superman is turning into pure information. His cells are literally bursting out of his skin. He's like, and there's just these cracks of white coming out from under him. And he has a final kiss to Lois, and he says, "I have only moments to save the world." Lois says, "That's more than you ever needed," which is so brilliant. And he says, "I love you, Lois Lane, until the end of time. I love you, Superman." Brilliant stuff. We see Superman fly off into the sun, and then we cut to at this kind of lovely epilogue scene where it's a year later, and there's a memorial for Superman, and Lois has this wonderful line where she says, "Superman's not dead. We published that headline as a warning to be carried back through time." Brilliant. But we know he's up there building an artificial heart to keep the sun alive, and he'll be back when he's done, Jimmy. And when he's done, he knows where to find me. And we cut to just another masterful splash page of Superman in classic kind of socialist Joe Shuster style. He's got this big kind of bit of machinery that he's pulling at. It's like a big clockwork steampunk artificial heart inside the sun, and he's fixing the sun from inside. And that's our final look at Superman and All-Star Superman. And then we finally see Leo Quintum, and he's hard at work on the project base on the moon, on Project 2, which is basically working on Superman 2, the successor to Superman, because they have his genome now, and they're able to make a second Superman, basically. And that is the final issue. Yeah, I'll throw it to you guys now. I've said a lot there already. What do you guys think?
The only thing I'd say is I kind of interpreted the conversation with Jor-El and Kal-El at the beginning a little bit differently. I thought the way I took it was that Jor-El was kind of pushing Kal-El to go back, that he's explaining that he is dead, and what death really is the transfer of consciousness and energy into a new state, and he has the ability to decide, like, between heaven and hell, to create what he wants from the afterlife. He says, and maybe I'm misreading it, but he says, where is it here? He says, after bodily death, as neo-Conlab studies confirm, individual awareness persists for a time and builds for itself thought palaces or complex hells. So you can create your heaven or your hell to reside in. He said, here the choice is simple: to remain at play within the field of living, fluid consciousness, or to turn and face down evil one last time. And then the next line from Lex is, you decide. So I took from it that it was Jor-El saying, you can take the easy option out and you can build your own afterlife, you can build your own heaven or your own hell and stay here, or you can go back and get this fucking job done. You decide. And obviously Kal-El decides to go back. That's the way I interpreted it. But again, that's what I love about it. There's so many ways to read the same panel and take away different things. I think it's phenomenal.
See, my reading on it was, the very next page. Then we see Jor-El says, "Well, Superman's like, yeah, but there's one more labor," and Jor-El's like, "Oh, there's always one more. Your work is done. You've shown them the face of the Man of Tomorrow. You've given them an idea. Oh, here we go, Man of Steel. You've given them an ideal to aspire to, embodied their highest aspirations. They will race and stumble and fall and crawl and curse, and finally they will join you in the sun, Kal-El." So I read that as him saying it's okay for you to let go at this stage. But you are absolutely right. It is also the voice in his head telling him, like, this is, you have to make a choice, son. It's Kevin Costner. Fun little bit of trivia. If I'm not mistaken, the craft they're flying around with on Krypton, at least at some point in the Silver Age, that was literally called a Jor-El, and it was named after the inventor, who was Jor-El.
Anthony, what do you think overall about, say, Lex Luthor's journey in this issue, his realization at the end of what it was like? Because he gains the powers, but not the wisdom, not the insight into what it is. Like he's still very Lex Luthor, even though he understands from this perspective what Superman has always been experiencing.
Or does he? All right, Rob, well, you take it because I see you.
I think he's just on the cusp of gaining that wisdom in that beautiful moment where he breaks down in tears. This is how he sees it all the time, just us, and we're all in here together. That is him having his breakthrough moment. And now he falls back on that a little bit in the moment directly after that. But I think this is setting him on the path to righteousness. This is him beginning the road to redemption, and that's what I find so beautiful about it, and that's why I think he is Leo Quintum after this.
And it's the gravity gun that removes his powers, and then obviously Superman destroys the serum, so that's robbed from him. So is that another reason to hate Superman going forward? I don't know.
No, I think this is okay. I think he hates him in that moment, but I think the moment of clarity he has here is what sets him on the right path. And I said this in our very second or third episode. I've mentioned a couple of times about his obsession with Einstein, and that is referenced the last issue. And I always viewed that as, because he is deeply obsessed with Einstein in the Bronze Age. Like, it comes up all the time. And when he says that, this is how he sees it all the time, every day. Like, it's all just us living together. And he even references Einstein in that speech. I always read that as, okay, he's obviously talking about Superman and the super senses. I think on some level Lex is also talking about this is how Einstein sees the world around him. I always liked that idea. That's it might just be me, but I thought that was a really nice idea, that he reveres Einstein so much, and now he finally understands what it was like to see the world as he did.
Where do you land here, Anthony?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the interesting question with Lex in this is, does he achieve a genuine breakthrough? And it's tricky because when Superman punches him out and says, if you cared, you would have done this years ago, generally speaking, yes, I agree with that wholeheartedly. But I guess, not to argue on behalf of Lex, but it's like, but now Lex has had this experience that he had never had before of experiencing the world the way Superman does. And he seemingly, arguably, has achieved some measure of different perspective or understanding. So it's not beyond the realm of possibility that, no, he actually would behave differently after this. I mean, probably because of my long fandom of Smallville, but it's like I always look for the best in Lex. So there's a big part of me that's like, yeah, no, maybe he would be different now. And look, if we subscribe to the Leo Quintum theory, that could be an answer. I don't know how much you want to carve this out, but I would say, we look at that animated adaptation, that's a huge point of departure in terms of how Superman's genetic code ends up with Leo Quintum. Right here in the comic, as you laid out, Superman gives it to Leo. In the comic, it's Lex. Like in the comic, in the movie, it's Lex. We get that epilogue scene with Lex in prison where he seemingly has this turn, and he's the one who transcribes the genetic code and gives it to Leo. So I feel like the animated movie gives you an answer to this question that we're debating here, whereas the comic doesn't. And I don't know. I guess it leads to a conversation like this, and it's open to interpretation. I mean, I don't know. I kind of like going back to what's more interesting. I think it's more interesting to me if Lex does actually have a change after what he's experienced. If it's like, no, he's just going to be evil still after that. I don't know. I don't know how much that really says.
And we have that lovely moment between them in the prison where Superman says, I know there's good in you, Lex. Like, you'd like to think that he's right, wouldn't you? Like,
yeah.
It's a really interesting... I was thinking reading it today, like, man, this is different to post-crisis Lex, isn't it? And like, for years, everyone's like, oh, what a great change. And we've even said it on this show. What a great change that was, making him a businessman, making him the scum of the earth and all that stuff. Like, if you look at that wonderful story, is it 77 miles to Metropolis? What's it called, Anthony?
900 miles from Metropolis, is it?
Yeah. Like, that guy is never having a moment of clarity like this. No. He's just pure evil, that character. And then you look at this and you're like, maybe Lex is more interesting this way, to be honest. You know, and I think nowadays the way they write him is kind of a nice compromise between the two. He's kind of the genius scientist, but he's also the businessman, which I think is a good sort of blend. But yeah, like, this just really harkens back to what Bronze Age Lex was like, which was just really interesting and cool. And yeah, this is that panel. I keep that was my Facebook cover photo for a while. That panel of Lex just touching his chin. It's such a great moment, and it's every time we reboot Superman, I'm like, this is the scene I want with Lex Luthor. Do this scene, please. And when Jesse Eisenberg was cast, I was like, I bet they'll do that scene, and they didn't. And it's another thing I'm really hopeful about Nicholas Hoult is that they might eventually do some moment like this where he has that moment of clarity and he breaks down in tears. I'd love to see that on the screen.
At the end of the day, if Superman leaves the Earth having changed Lex Luthor for the better and converting him or evolving him into a new version that is good for humanity, surely that's one of his greatest feats of all. To leave Earth with this protector. That's what I was surprised, having watched the animated movie in preparation for this. I hadn't seen it in a good few years, that they so definitively answered that question. I forgot that it was left open to such interpretation in the book, and I'm not sure which way I prefer it. I like both for different reasons, but I like to think that, like, the book ends with Leo Quintum in the epilogue saying that Lex is basically a shell of a man, having finally achieved what he always wanted, a world without Superman. I don't love that. I would prefer, I think, a version where he's experienced this, I don't know, spiritual revolution. And
yeah, but this is only a year later, though. Maybe he's still on that path, and it's Leo Quintum saying it. Leo Quintum is talking about Lex, where Lex is at emotionally. Like, surely that's even more of a hint that he's talking about himself.
How do you feel, Anthony, in terms of the conclusion of this story for Lois Lane and where it leaves her at the end?
Yeah, I mean, that's interesting. And I guess that ties in with what I was going to ask you guys about where it leaves Superman and kind of, because they go hand in hand, I feel like, and it maybe it changes depending on whether you look at All-Star Superman in a vacuum or you look at it in the context of Grant Morrison's larger Superman work, as we talked about last time. And if you do kind of consider All-Star Superman as, I guess, the midpoint in his mega epic, if you start with New 52 Action Comics, the early Superman, and then we have this quote-unquote final story, and then you go all the way to 1 million, we know eventually, and even going back to the earlier issue, the Smallville set issue of All-Star Superman, we know there's this golden Superman who does reemerge at some point, and in DC 1 million has this reunion in the 853rd century with Lois. So I don't know. In that that changes it a little bit, but in the context of this, no. I mean, it's a bittersweet ending. It's like, but also open to interpretation, because it's like, is he in the sun for now, forever? We don't know. And even Lois says, like, he'll be back when he's done. Well, what does that mean? She might be long gone by that time. But I think, I don't know. It kind of, maybe it strikes kind of a happy medium between we've seen various permutations of like a quote unquote final Superman, like what happens to him in the end. And so, no, this isn't them living a normal human life together. This isn't him dead either, right? It's somewhere in between. Like, I think this kind of hits the sweet spot for me, for both of them. How do you guys feel?
I'm not a huge fan of this idea of Lois being left alone, yearning for Superman, and whether he returns in 5 years or 10 years or 100 years. I'm not a huge fan of that. I much prefer a version where they end up together and they grow old, they have kids. And I know, if you can read on and you can retake from this that he is the gold Superman who comes back, and that they end up together, and that he takes her into the future and all that kind of stuff. It is bittersweet, and like you said, it is open to interpretation. I do like a happy ending. I'm a bit of a softie. I do like a happy ending. So yeah, it is. It's open for interpretation. It is a bit bittersweet. It's not my preferred ending for their story as a couple, or for their relationship, but saying that, I don't think it's definitive. It's not a closed book. It's not the end. It is open that he could return and this story could continue and their relationship could continue. And I really like that. What do you think, Rob?
I'd probably be the same. I mean, the definitive ending for me is probably how they ended it in Superman and Lois, to be honest. That's how I would end the Legend of Superman, is that the god becoming a man, as you said, Anthony, on your episode. I think that's the absolute best way to do it ever. I think they just live out their lives as a happy married human couple, and then they pass away. But I think this is as good as any an ending to the story. It's beautiful, it's bittersweet, and as you say, Anthony, there is the promise that he might return someday. And I think when you do read that DC 1 million story, it does completely recontextualize this whole thing. And because it was literally written by Grant Morrison, it's not like somebody else writing, writing a continuation of the story, because then it's not necessarily canon. The fact that Grant Morrison themselves actually wrote that and that Son Superman literally has the same costume and everything. It's absolutely all connected for me, and it does recontextualize it, and it makes it even. It's an even nicer idea that they just live into infinity. I think it's like he uses Lois's life force or something, and he forges her into this immortal being like him, and that's how they reconnect or something like that in the distant future. That is also a really, really cool idea. So yeah, no, I really like it, and it just that scene again where they have their final moment and their final kiss. It's just heartbreakingly romantic, and that's one thing. Like, I don't know how romantic the comics always are. It's something they do really well in the shows and the movies, but in terms of like romantic moments, even in post-crisis comics, it's like, yeah, there are romantic moments. This is just one of the truly great romantic moments in any Superman comic, I think, and it's. When he says "I love you" until the end of time, and then Lois like shouts after him "I love you, Superman," it just really hits me every single time. It's gorgeous. So yeah, I love them in this book. And I'm it is bittersweet, but I think when you have that extra bit of context, it really adds something extra to it. I love it.
Anthony, I don't want to leave you go without just maybe speaking to the animated movie. We've touched on it a few times over this episode and the previous episode. Okay, obviously we're talking about the animated movie All-Star Superman. It came out in 2011, I believe it was, directed by Sam Liu, written by the late great Dwayne McDuffie. Where do you stand with the animated version of All-Star Superman?
It's okay. To me, I'm not so put off by it, but I don't know how high I hold it up. Like, I'm glad they did it. It makes sense that they would do this as an adaptation. This is far from the only instance where we saw one of these adaptations suffer by having to be fit into a very specific runtime.
Yeah, I think it's 76 minutes in total, I think is the length of it. It's not that long.
Yeah, I mean, there are others, I guess the second one that they led with when they started that line was New Frontier, and there was so much that had to be truncated, but I actually thought in terms of the art of adaptation, I actually liked the way they repositioned that as more of a Hal Jordan story. Like, I thought it worked. Here, it just felt more like they just cut stuff out, right? Like, that's, if I'm kind of comparing the two of them, I feel like with New Frontier, it's like, okay, no, they took a specific angle to adapt it. Here, they just cut out a lot, and honestly, excising all the Smallville stuff, they lost they lost me at that. But the bit with Lex at the end, I think if there's one aspect of that animated adaptation that I find the most intriguing, it probably is that it answers that question with Lex the way that it does. So yeah, overall, I mean, like, for people who are listening, like, if you haven't watched the animated movie, like, give it a watch. I mean, I think it's worth checking out. But yeah, not my favorite. How about you guys?
When I watched it, I liked there were aspects of it that I liked personally. I have to say, I liked the fact that they tried to do justice to the art of the book, and that they tried to bring the story, to do the story justice to a certain amount. But I think the omissions, like you said there, Anthony, were so egregious. The Smallville stuff, the death of Jonathan Kent is gone. The Bizarro. So it's the death of Jonathan Kent, the funeral in Smallville, issue 6. That's not in it. The storyline in regards to Jimmy Olsen, doing the day as Leo Quintum, that's gone. The Bizarro stuff is all gone out of it. But really, for me, I can accept them cutting out the Bizarro stuff, but the death of Jonathan Kent and that issue, I think, is so pivotal to this story overall and the heart of this story that I think leaving that out is a huge mistake. Like, I could see why you could make maybe a limited animated series out of this, a 12 episode series. It's not suited for a 76-minute animated movie. I think, Dwayne McDuffie was a great writer, and he probably did his best with the time he had, and I'm sure it broke his heart having to cut certain things out of this. But yeah, overall, my view of it is, like you, I recommend that people should check it out if they're fans of All-Star Superman, just to round out that knowledge and that experience of what's out there in terms of the story. But it pales greatly in comparison to the original source material, I think. Rob, I don't even think I need to ask you what you think about it. I can tell by your face. Where do you stand on it, Rob?
I will preface this by saying I know people some people really like that animated movie, and at least one person reached out to us and said that they love it and that they think it's Dwayne McDuffie's masterpiece. That he managed to summarize it as quote unquote as well as he did. I just think this is and with respect to the creators involved and everyone, I know it's budget, it's time, it's everything else. You know, that they probably had a clear mission objective that they wanted to adapt it as faithfully as they can. I think the whole thing was a huge miscalculation and an absolute failure. You talked about, you know, that they at least tried to adapt the artwork. I think that to me is like an instant failure. Like I keep talking about how lavish the artwork in this is and how big and expressive and complex and beautiful so many of these panels are. The look of the animated movie is so rote and stock, and it just looks very plain and lifeless and soulless.
Yeah, but the only thing, sorry to interrupt, but the only thing I'd say to that though, Rob, is I remember watching other animated movies from DC.
I know what you're gonna say. You're gonna say Superman Unbound, and it doesn't look like Gary Frank, and I get that, but like
and Superman versus the Elite, and I'm not saying it has to be a copy, but at least
they made some attempt to emulate Frank Whiteley, but it doesn't look like. I think to do this justice, and I hate saying of all the people to say this, it feels wrong coming from me, because I have great respect for people working with a budget and stuff like that, but I think in this particular case, to really emulate that style and that presentation, you need a big Spider-Verse budget, and you need to really come at it, and like the animation needs to be so innovative and expressive and big and just magic, and this is not that at all. And like, I mean, again, I'm sorry to keep I hope I'm not coming across as mean. The performances are really lifeless as well. Like some of the bit where Quentin is talking to Superman, he's telling him that he's dying. You'd swear he was telling him that, you know, his tax returns were in or something. It's just really dull like uninvolved performances. And then you know, talking about stuff they omitted, like doing the two Kryptonians coming to Earth in lieu of some of the other really beautiful, like I think it was Chris Sims, the writer, the kind of reviewer guy who pointed this out. The only reason I can think of for why that might have been was that they were like, well, you know, kids are going to watch this. Kids are going to want to watch Superman punching some other Kryptonians with heat vision as well. It makes the most sense to use that story. That's a really cynical reason to put that story in, I think, you know, and it feels like it probably was the reason. The other thing, they made some really strange changes to the dialogue. We talked about that lovely bit where he's having the final fight with Solaris the Tyrant Son, and you know, Solaris the Tyrant Son says, "Have mercy." And in the comic, Superman has the wonderful, badass, but nonetheless Superman response. He says, "You'll live." Okay, beautiful Superman moment. In the animated movie, for whatever reason, they changed that line from "you'll live" to "I have no mercy left." And then he punches him, and it's implied that he kills him. What the heck is that about? Why change? And that's, again, I've mentioned it before. The problem I have with these animated movies, they're so slavishly faithful to the source material that when they do make changes, they're jarring changes. And it's like, why even bother?
One that I noticed was the interpretation I got from the book was that Superman isn't expecting the Sun Eater to turn up, whereas in the movie, it's his plan to unleash the Sun Eater, the baby Sun Eater, on the Tyrant Son, which I don't like. You mentioned something in the last episode.
I don't like that either.
You mentioned something in the last episode, Rob, where you said there was something about the scene in the prison that you really disliked.
Yeah, I don't remember the exact bit, but there's a moment where Superman uses his freeze breath to freeze all the baddies so that they don't escape. And then in the animated movie, they literally show Parasite like a second later, just like rampaging through all those guys and murdering them. And it's like, we didn't need that, you know?
Yeah,
like,
that's fair.
You know, my attitude is all like the best animated stuff, best animated superhero stuff Warner Brothers ever did was when they just took little nuggets from the comics and used their own initiative and created their own stories and their own brilliant worlds. When they slavishly adapt things, it just comes across to me as just a bit cynical and a bit empty and a bit soulless. I just don't see the point. And I think James Gunn has the right idea. He's taken ideas and sort of influences and flavors from All-Star Superman, and he's doing his own thing. I think that's how you do it. And if they were ever to adapt All-Star Superman again in a big animated thing, I would like them to take the Spider-Verse approach, where it's like, here's a couple of flavors we have from that, and we're really, really paying homage to the artwork more than anything else, but an original take. I think it's wrong to try to, as you said before, Alan, like, you're taking 12 comic book issues and truncating them into 75 minutes. It's doomed to fail. It's a structure that doesn't allow for that, you know? So suffice to say, it's not for me. I think you're right, Anthony. I don't hate it. It is what it is. It's probably a good thing that they did it. Like, if they didn't, we'd all be sitting around wondering what it would have been like. So, and some people like it. I'm so happy for the people that do like it. God bless them. And I'm happy that they have this other thing, but it's not for me. Sorry, Alan. Go ahead.
One thing I would hope, I have to say, is that maybe younger audiences who don't revere All-Star Superman in the same way might watch the animated film, and then check out the book and fall in love with the book. That's the only thing. And I've seen much worse out in relation to the animated movies than All-Star Superman. I have to say that. I've seen a lot worse come out of the studio in relation to either adapting stories or not adapting stories, doing original stories or whatever, Superman Doomsday, that kind of thing from 2007.
My favorite, when they do those adaptations, my favorite ones are actually the stories that maybe aren't like top of the list, that they're not like the greatest stories of all time type ones, and then they do an animated. Public Enemies, I think, is one of my favorite ones. And like that is a really good comic. I wouldn't quite say it's like top tier though, you know. And I think that movie is a lot of fun. I think that's really. I know you did an episode on it recently, Anthony.
Yeah, we just revisited it. Yeah, I mean, I'm a huge fan of the comic and the movie as well. And that movie, I think, did a great job of capturing the art of Ed McGuinness and was faithful with some slight tweaks. There were one or two things where I'm like, you could have pushed more here, but there were a couple changes that I thought actually did improve on the comic. Yeah, that's one that I hold up in higher regard. I mean, the last thing I would say with the All-Star Superman animated adaptation, I agree. I think that the thinking almost certainly was, why they cut the Smallville scene and not the other Kryptonians. It's like, oh yeah, because that lends itself to more action. But I definitely think that's a misstep, but that's probably why. I think All-Star Superman itself is probably, I don't want to say there's an inherent trap in adapting it, but I feel like you could look at it and be like, okay, it's 12 issues. Thematically and in terms of the emotional journey, it all connects. But plot-wise, yeah, you kind of feel like, oh yeah, you could just kind of pull these things out and it'll still work. But it's like, no, like you really need, you're undercutting the journey if you do it. But I think it's misleading because you look at it and you say, oh yeah, we'll just, okay, plop out the Bizarro stuff, but it still just doesn't come together the same way.
And what excites me about this audiobook as well is they actually they can't fall back on the artwork because it isn't there. That they have to use the story, and the audiobook format being longer, it will give them more of an opportunity to flesh things out and really take time and breathe with the characters, which I really felt like this didn't do. And I feel like I'm excited to hear the performances and hear that dialogue maybe with a little bit more of the richness that I hear when I'm reading the comic. I'm excited to hear that.
This has been epic, guys. I've really enjoyed recording these two episodes. But Andy, I just wanted to give you the final word on maybe the legacy of All-Star Superman, the book overall, and where you think it stands in the pantheon of great Superman stories.
I think this is one that has earned its spot. Right, it's on virtually every top 10 list that you'll see, and it's always recommended. And like I said, I worked at a comic shop for many years, and you longed for those kinds of works that you could just kind of hand to someone. Even though we talked about it might not be the first thing that you give to a Superman fan, but still to kind of have this complete work that stands on its own. And I think it truly is a love letter, not just to the Silver Age, but to really the vast scope of the Superman mythology. And I think more than anything, the spirit or the sense of wonder that it conjures, there's something very resonant. I mean, even though it's tapping into an era of Superman that like wasn't what we grew up with per se, but it's tapping into something deeper with the character that's really resonant. And so it's one that, like I said last time, I was not in love with this at the start when it was first coming out, but I'm really glad that I've had the experience with it. And like I said before, I mean, this was a great opportunity to revisit it. And for anyone listening who good Lord, if you've never read it, please read it. But also it's like, if you have read it and maybe you didn't get a lot out of it, it's worth going back to. I think you really are rewarded by those repeated readings. And so I would definitely encourage people to do that. But yeah, this is one I hold in very, very high regard. And I think it's earned its place on all those lists.
Well said. Rob, is there anything else you want to add before we finish up?
Yes, actually. Since we recorded our last episode, which was issues 1 to 6, Alan, yourself and myself did a lovely discussion with Michael Bailey on Whatever Happened to the Man of Tomorrow, which I think should be out by the time this comes out, wherein he made a brief reference to Alan Moore's run on a book called Supreme. Now, in the time since we recorded last, I have actually read that entire run. It's about 20 issues. Basically, Supreme is a pretty crappy Image Comics Superman, and not a knockoff, but like, what if Superman was a badass, evil, bad, extreme dude, right, from the 90s? He was created by none other than Rob Liefeld, and about 40 issues in, for whatever reason, Rob Liefeld got a call from Alan Moore saying, "How are you doing, Rob? I would love to write Supreme. Can I completely reboot the character? Because I don't really like the character as it is right now. Can I completely reboot?" And what he did was he turned it into a love letter to Silver Age Superman. And it is very, very, very similar to All-Star Superman, written by Grant Morrison, who Alan Moore does not like. They have a long-standing feud. They really don't like each other, which is really amusing to me because their writing is actually very similar, especially when they write earnest stories like this one. And this is the most earnest Alan Moore book I've ever read. Like, there is no cynicism in this at all. This is like a heartfelt love letter. Like, if you like Robots in the Fortress of Solitude, if you like Crypto, if you like crazy time travel stuff, if you like, the hero, wondering about their ultimate fate in the universe, all this, and just kind of, throwbacks to the tropes of the Silver Age, all the stuff Grant Morrison does in this, Alan Moore does in that. And it came out like 10 years beforehand. I cannot recommend it enough. And I know, Alan, you're probably sick of me recommending things at this stage.
No.
That end up being weird and shitty and kind of like B-movie. And it's like, oh, here's Rob with his weirdo. I guarantee you guys and anyone listening who likes All-Star or Superman in general, I guarantee you're absolutely going to love Supreme. Nobody ever talks about it. It's completely just lost to the sands of time. Unfortunately, it's completely out of print. There are ways and means, and if anyone wants to contact me about that, you can on the Facebook group. If you really want to, you can also hunt down the issues on eBay. You'll probably be able to find them easily enough. But man, I can't. If nothing else, please try and consider reading Alan Moore's Supreme. And by the way, he came in 41 issues in. You do not need to read a single one of those issues before issue 41. Jump into issue 41. If you have any appreciation for Superman, I guarantee you're going to like Supreme.
Anthony, where can people find you if they want to listen to more of your content?
Sure. So I host 2 Superman podcasts, Digging for Kryptonite, a Superman fan journey. We just celebrated our 200th episode.
We say that.
Character.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Huge achievement.
Thank you. So we cover the character across time and media. We have a bunch of fun standalone episodes leading up to the big movie, and then we'll be doing multiple days worth of coverage when the movie comes out. Then the other podcast is another exciting episode in the Adventures of Superman, where we go episode by episode through the classic George Reeves series. We're in the color era. We're making the best of it. We're having fun. We're having fun. And both shows, wherever you get podcasts. And feel free to connect via social media. Digging for Kryptonite has handles on all of the major platforms.
Well, Anthony, thank you so much again for joining us and giving us so much of your time. We've really appreciated having you on. Like I said last time, it was long overdue. You'll hopefully come back and join us again in the future for something else. Maybe something a little bit lighter next time. Maybe something that, doesn't take, 6 hours to record overall. But you guys know how long my episodes are, so this was par for the course. I was happy to do this. I know it was great to be on for these, so thank you. Rob is going mad here in the corner. What's up, Rob?
I have a voice note that I want to play, and I want you all to hear it, okay? This is from our old pal, Lorenzo Valdez. He sent in a voice note a couple of times, and this one, I got a big laugh when I listened to this, and I can't wait for you guys to hear it.
Alan and Rob, Rob and Anthony in this case. This is Lorenzo Valdez calling in once again. I like the All-Star Superman comics, but I've always preferred the animated film. I love the animated film. Of all the amazing things that Dwayne McDuffie gave us as fans in his lifetime, I think that's one of the best. I think that's one of the most impressive accomplishments of his career was what he did with that screenplay, sort of streamlining the narrative and excising some of the weirder Morrisonian elements that are present in the comics. I do like the All-Star Superman comics, but they very much would not be something that I would hand somebody trying to get into Superman comics being their first thing. That would not be the first comic that I would recommend them reading, but I would recommend them reading it eventually because, again, I do really like those comics, but I do think that the animated film is superior. Also, I wanted to bring up, in terms of Leo Quintum and the fan theory regarding him, I don't know whether this really lends credence to the fan theory or not, but let's remember that Lex did have a sidekick on Superboy named Leo. So again, I don't know whether that really supports the fan theory, but I think it is important to mention. Klana forever and always. Bye-bye.
Even I don't think that was a reference, but I love him for thinking it was.
Excellent. Loved it. No, that's great. Thanks again, Lorenzo, for getting in contact. If you want to get in contact with us like Lorenzo, we're on Facebook and Instagram at All-Star Superfan. We're on Twitter at All-Star Superpod. You can send us a voice note or an email to allstarsuperpod@gmail.com. Rob, that page for the voice notes you set up?
Oh, yes. SpeakPipe All-Star Superfan. It'll be in the show notes. You can click on it, send us a voice note that way. Or send us the old-fashioned way through the email is fine too.
And guys, there's a lot of great conversation on the Inside All-Star Superfan Facebook group, so be sure to join us there for deep dives and conversations into all things Superman and beyond. So everybody, until next time, stay safe, stay super, and take care out there. Bye bye.